for large firms. They create the crisis, offer the global government solution, Washington Post. Fed undaunted by uncertain prospects of more money printing. So now they're going to devalue the currency publicly. Okay, let's go back to Russell. Russell, we got you on the phone now. Please continue. Flesh out what you were talking about, the evidence that the entire world, Fallujah, the camps, the ID cards, Iraq, this is all the model perfected on your people.
Exactly. Even the death squads were first practiced on us back in 1973 on the Pine Ridge Sioux Indian Reservation, where you're calling me from. And but my point is education. It's the living proof. When I grew up in California, Northern California, California was ranked #1 in the nation, and the nation was ranked #1 in the world in education. Then the federal government began to take over the funding and then the curriculum of all the schools in the U.S. It is now, California is no longer #1. It's number 43 in the nation. And we have slipped within the last 15 years from 17th as a nation, 17th in education to 22nd. And so it's almost complete now that the federal government has been brainwashing our children for decades. And it's all taken from the reservation system. The stealing of kids, that is one of the most horrific examples of what the federal government has been doing, not only to us, but now to the American children. It is, it's blasphemous. The jailing of young America, ostensibly to fight the drug war, and yet the incarceration, we have more bodies, more people in prison than all of China, and China has a couple billion people. And yet it's supposed to be a communist horror place, and yet America has more people in prison than China. That's absurd. That's absolutely absurd.
Well, that's like shipping in whiskey for the Indians, and then when they get rowdy, using it as an excuse to shoot them. The government's on record shipping in almost all the narcotics, and then when they catch you with it, you go to one of their slave camps.
Exactly. And it is a slave camp. It's unbelievable. My son, I have a son that was in prison. They wouldn't parole him because he was ramrodding the building of homes. They called him Janklow Homes because he was the governor at the time. But they were building homes with prison labor, $1.50 a day. And they wouldn't let him out on parole because he was the supervisor. He was so accomplished that he was more valuable in prison than out.
And then the general public, like idiots, say, good, make those criminals work. When you're working for 25 cents or even $1.50 an hour, no one can compete with that, not even the illegal aliens. And so the economy further implodes.
Exactly. And Colorado has become such a prison state. They make nothing but office furniture there. So there's no business at all in Colorado or the surrounding states making business furniture, for instance. So it cut out that industry. So we definitely have slave labor going on in this country, and it's unconscionable that the American people don't do anything about all of what the Indian policies has been visited upon on their backs and on their children.
What's interesting is either way you slice it, it's an Indian policy, because from my study, before they kicked it off in a scientific way against Native Americans in North America, this was first developed in India, which are really the Indians.
Exactly. But the payoff now comes, and I can't believe the name callers. I call the Republican Party nothing but name callers, and I call the Democrats brain dead because they don't know what they are, and they don't try to do anything except rubber stamp whatever the bosses say. But now they've announced they're going to print more money. Can you believe that? The Fed is going to print more money when they're the only ones buying the financial instruments that the United States produces, the bonds and the treasury notes, because no one in the world wants anything that is of no value, and the dollar is of no value. It's unbelievable how America is keeping their head, it's the classic ostrich approach.
Yeah, they should get rid of the American eagle as the symbol and have it be the ostrich.
Exactly. That's what it's become. Great point. I'm going to start using that. The eagle has become the ostrich. The American eagle. It's sick. I'm wearing a T-shirt that says, if voting could change anything, it would be illegal. And that's what really bothers me about the Tea Party movement. And when it first started, it was great. It's all about the Constitution and constitutional law, and let's get back to that. And then they start feeding in the crazies, to make them look like it's a fringe outfit. And they accomplished it.
Well, they've been caught.
People are going back to this asinine liberty inhibiting and preventing two-party system. It's impossible to have individual liberty with a two-party system.
It's amazing, and they have been caught infiltrating the Tea Parties with people to say racist things and do things, and they've labeled the Tea Party as the only resistance to the New World Order. Then they hand it over to the Republicans so they can pose as anti-establishment and get right back into power. But now the whole country is sinking into a global depression. They're announcing the one world government run by the banks that are the authors of this collapse. This empire is long in the tooth. What do you see happening, Russell Means?
Well, I see the United States of America with only its military power trying to hang on to some kind of international influence. But when Israel thumbs their nose at anything the United States wants or desires or asks for, they just thumb their nose. Europe, Russia, you go on down the line. China has switched over to the euro. Brazil's real has now become the currency to buy. It's backed by something solid. The United States is just backed by paper, worthless paper. It's unconscionable. The entire machinations of the ruling class of America is so obvious. It's so obvious that anybody with a brain, I can't understand what's in the food that has made American people so stupid and the laughing stock of the world.
Well, Russell, since you raised that, I have Children's Flintstones, pediatrician's #1 choice, and it says right here on the container that it has aspartame. And
oh, my God.
And then here is a allergy medicine, Alvert, and it's got aspartame in it. And then all the major sugar gums for children now, Hubba Bubba, Big League Chew, all of them now have aspartame, and I have all the government's own reports admitting it gives you cancer and makes you go blind. And Glenn Beck's going blind and admits he drinks Diet Coke, but I guess it's funny. He's just going to laugh about it and go blind.
It's amazing how the American people have allowed the government to treat the end result of drug-induced illnesses by the pharmaceutical corporations. And they allow that to continue. They're building dialysis centers. They're putting more drugs to take care of the drugs that have already got you addicted and sick and ill and that kill you. So they produce more drugs so that you can die faster and die in more pain. It's unbelievable how the American people have allowed themselves to be so duped.
Well, from the 1730s, there are, and anybody can Google this and pull up the university websites, there are the British colonel ordering them to take infected smallpox blankets and then give it to the Native Americans, to the Indians. And, let's give the tainted wood alcohol whiskey to them. Ha ha. Look at that engine go blind. Well, now the globalists just do it to everybody, Russell.
Right. And if they don't do it to you, then they imprison you for slave labor. You know, if you won't take their drug-induced sicknesses, they'll put you in prison. Or impoverish you. Like, we don't have a middle class anymore, you know? And those that think there still is a middle class are, you know, by January or February, the dollar is going to be worth about, let's see, the euro's $1.40 now. It's going to be about $4 at the very minimum, probably around February or March. The euro is going to be worth about $4. That's inflation. It's unbelievable what the United States is doing to its own people.
And the Federal Reserve is selling it as if it's a good thing. We're going to fix the debt by inflating. Was it good for Argentina? Was it good for Zimbabwe? Weimar Republic, Germany, Russell?
Exactly. It's you know, all those platitudes about history repeating itself, America is the proof. It just goes over and over and over again, and the American people are acting. Look at this coming November election. What's going to change? Nothing. It's unbelievable that people are even believing the Republicans, because Obama is worse than Bush. He's continued Bush's policies and added more to himself. Not one presidential directive that Bush has laid out has been changed by Obama, and he's added more. And now he's directed the U.S. government to kill anybody they say is a terrorist. Just go shoot him.
Well, they're also rolling out the naked body scanners on the streets, the courthouses, the airports, and they admit, even the New York Times admits, it gives you cancer, and it gives the operators cancer, and they have 500 mobile trucks, 10 times more powerful than a chest X-ray, looking through our walls. This is 1984. This is psychopaths running the country.
Yes, it is totally 1984. You know, there's an interesting sidebar to that. You know, Orwell, when TV came out back in the 40s, he wrote the book, and he said 1940, and he labeled it 1948. And it was a factual thing that was going to happen based upon the advent of TV. His publisher said, look, this book isn't going to sell. Turn it into a science fiction and give it a different title. So he inverted 48 to 84, and voila, you had the science fiction prediction of what is happening right now.
And that's a true story. And, of course, he was a member of the Imperial Police in India, what we were talking about, developed for Indians in the U.S. Then he was a communist and thought that was the solution. Then he found out it was run by the same people. Then he worked for OSS. That's why his book was so accurate. He worked for them.
Right. And it's amazing that the college students that's not required reading. But what can you say when 80% of the law schools in America do not teach the Constitution? You know, I have a daughter that just graduated from a law school. She had to almost demonstrate just to get a class on the Constitution at the University of Minnesota School of Law.
Unbelievable. Russell Means is our guest, russellmeans.com. Links up on Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. Russell, I mean, it's all coming to a head. They've preemptively built the police state up in the last 20 years. Now they've got it lined up. Now they're imploding the economy. And the Pentagon comes out last month and says, we're afraid of a total collapse, but we've got martial law ready for the civil unrest. We're going to save you. I mean, it's amazing how they create the crisis, offer the solution.
Exactly, and then there's still warmongering over in the Middle East, trying to control that basis when every other major country, Europe, Russia, China, they're all making backdoor deals with the Middle East, while America is killing its young people.
And the reason they can't beat the Afghans and Pakistans is they've got the fighting spirit of American Indians, but they've got grenade launchers.
That's the difference. Grenade launchers and and missile-firing shoulder weapons. It's a